Welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing. I'm joined today by Alison, McConnell and Sean Martin. How are you guys? You good?
Good morning.
Tony, yourself?
I'm okay, yes. And it's the day before crunch time in Hungary for Celtic. Europa League qualification hopes could all rest on getting a result away from home, which is not Celtic's forte in any European competition. But hey, ho, let's go. Alison, can Celtic keep their European or Europa League qualification hopes alive by going to Hungary and winning against Ferencvaros?
I think it should certainly be the ambition. I think they're capable of it. I think even when you analyse away European performances this season, there's been a very familiar pattern. I think there has been a soft backline. I think Celtic have been vulnerable defensively at times, but they've had goals in them. I think you have to take that positive. I think you have to go in search to win the game and to try and score. But equally, I think to be patient and to try and be a bit more robust defensively. I think you've seen that grown over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks. I think Celtic have got stronger, maybe in tandem with the consistency of personnel selection and players getting to know one another. And Joe Hart, I think, has come to the fore too in recent weeks. I think his performances, I think he's been a pretty big player for Celtic since he came in. I think he's got a bit of leadership. I think there have been frailties defensively, particularly that have been exploited in the European arena. But I think if you can eliminate that, then Celtic do have goals in them. I think they should certainly be looking towards going and trying to come away with something from the game.
Sean, we saw a thing of beauty at Celtic Park against Ferencvaros with Jota's marvellous flighted pass, 60-yard pass, Kyogo's first touch and finish. I think we made the point that had that been Iniesta to Messi, then it'd be shown on a loop for time and perpetual motion. It was a wonderful football goal, wasn't it? Wonderfully crafted, and I think if Celtic could produce something similar, then they could be on to a winner.
Aye, I think that's always the case. I think I agree with what Alison said there about the fact that although, apart from the Ferencvaros result, the other two results haven't been brilliant because they've got beat. I think there was still positives from both, and even in the 4-0 against Leverkusen, there was still positives. There was chances before Leverkusen got up ahead of steam and things like that. And certainly the Betis game could be one that got away in terms of Celtic being ahead early on and looking quite a good position and then letting it slip. So there's every chance that if either Betis or Leverkusen win tomorrow, second place is still very much in Celtic's grasp. If Celtic win also, it's still going to be massively difficult. Obviously, Betis and Leverkusen are considered to be kind of better than Celtic. But as I just said, they've already threatened Betis, and although they didn't score against Leverkusen, there was still the chances. So you never know. If you lessen the objective rather than Europa League football after Christmas, just to European football after Christmas, then even third place would be fine. And again, that means a win tomorrow night becomes vital to that as well. So it's a big one in a couple of ways, you could say.
Now, Frank Brennan comes in, regular contributor. Frank, how you doing? Take a 0-0 draw in Hungary right now, or any other kind of draw for that matter, to keep our unbeaten run going. Jason Lee says, I would wager we see a wide open attacking game from both sides. And Edward Y of Oz says Ferencvaros will certainly not play like Livy. They would want a win. So, a lot of opinion there, Alison. Do you agree with Sean that you lessen the objective but go for a win to at least try and get third spot at a minimum and keep that, European football after Christmas?
Firstly, I think it'll be very open. I think it will be a pretty open game. I don't think Ange Postecoglou knows any other way. I think he's been fairly clear about setting up to go for a win in every game. I don't think he's a pragmatic manager. I don't think he sets his stall out thinking we'll try and eke out a point here or there. I think he's been fairly candid about that, about how he wants his teams to play. I think you know what you're going to get. I think you can predict how Celtic are going to play. I think the big question really does just come down to, can they be a bit more solid through the middle? I think sometimes they've just looked very soft and very easy to open up. I think that's where you would maybe look to. I think we've spoken about this before, about the possibility of maybe playing with two holding midfielders or of two players in beside McGregor, maybe putting Nir Beaton in beside him, just so that you've got a layer of defence. I don't know if that's the way that the manager sees it. I don't know if he buys into that kind of approach, although we have seen it. You've seen it in some games previously. But I think he's fairly committed to winning games of football.
Sean, do you go gung-ho? Do you have a rip at this and try, as you say, keep this alive and try and get that second spot? Or do you be, Alison says he's not the pragmatic type, so he's going to try and get a result, isn't he?
Aye, of course he is. I think that much has been proven. One of the comments there, like, they won't play like Livy. They definitely won't play like Livy. But they did surprise us.
Nobody plays like Livy, Sean.
Apart from Livy, they did surprise us the last time though, because everybody, I think, was kind of on the whole expecting them to be more open, and they weren't as open as what was expected. But I think it's different this time. I think the fact they lost that game, I think the fact that they actually do need to win if they're wanting to get any chance of any European football after Christmas, I think that could play into Celtic's hands. I think it opens them up a wee bit, because they've got to come out basically from the get-go. If Celtic get an early goal, then you would think all bets would be off as to how many the game actually has in it.
Regular contributor David Bradley comes in and says 3 points are must to get that feel good factor back. You know, a couple of people are pointing out yesterday, but they're still on a 6-game unbeaten run, Alison, despite the feeling after the Livy game that there seemed to be a bit of doom and gloom after the Livy game. But I think it was just maybe the circumstances that it came around, and maybe the insipid performance in the Livy game. Do you go with that?
Yeah, I think it's probably a mixture of various things. I think it's a game you should be winning. Let's be honest. I think taking 1 point from 6 in 2 games against Livingston, it's not good enough. And I think that's part of the reason. The other big factor for me is you had an opportunity to go top of the league, to put a bit of pressure on Rangers. And I think it does bring into question just where you are in terms of the psychology behind it and the readiness to go and launch a title campaign. I think you wanted Celtic to come out all guns blazing on Saturday. What you wanted to see was the rampant Celtic that you've seen in flashes at times this season. And I think that was a frustrating thing, that the performance wasn't really as energetic and as robust as what you have seen, and what you know they have the personnel there that are capable of. I think then when you break it down, individual decisions, you start to call into question about leaving Kyogo on the bench, about the penalty taker. So I think it's a mixture of various things, but I think it probably felt like a defeat rather than a draw because of the opportunity that was missed. I would agree that a win would re-energise the club and the sport. I don't think it's maybe quite as easy as what that sounds. But yeah, I certainly think it would definitely ignite Celtic's European campaign.
It's always easy for us sitting here, Alison, isn't it? You know, commenting on these big decisions. Nales comes in and says Celtic should go for it, but win, lose or draw, just hope they get through the game without any injuries. David comes back in and says it was sore. And Frank comes back in and says European football after Christmas all desirable for a club like ours, but for me, winning the Premiership was our absolute priority this season, and particularly in the context of a major rebuild. We've spoken about that as well before, Sean. Do you go along with Frank's assessment on that?
I think if you ask anybody what the priority is, it would be the league, but that's not to say you can't, in a way, have your cake and eat it as well, and have the European football after Christmas too. There's no reason not to target all of it. Obviously, if you are asking for a priority, then it would be the league for most people, I would think.
Yeah, I'm always you can compete on both fronts kind of guy, you know what I mean? I expect a club like Celtic to compete in both fronts, Alison. Simon Thomas comes in. I expect Ferencvaros to attack from the outset and try to bring the crowd into the game. Kookaburra, another regular contributor, says if we win them, we probably have more Euro games. If we lose them, we can concentrate on the Premiership. Both are win-win outcomes, but we should go for it. There's a real plethora of opinions there, Alison, and sort of some agreeing, some saying that we should prioritise the Premiership.
I think the league's always a priority. I think every season the priority is to go and win the title. I think this season there's an additional carrot that goes with that, and the fact that the likelihood is it's going to open the door to automatic qualification for the Champions League, and that will be very brief. I think when you look at where the coefficient is now, that's not going to be something that's sustained. So I think it's an opportunity that you'd want to maximise and grab with both hands. But I think having European football and having some kind of involvement is good. I think it adds depth to the campaign. I also think it offers experience to the squad that are there in terms of exposure. to that level of opponent is something completely different from domestic football. I think the more experience you have on that in that arena, the benefit it is to you as individual players and as a collective.
Somebody agreeing with you? Kyogo, Ninja Striker Furuhashi comes in and says, Alison, still a mentality issue with the team. They didn't look like we were playing to go top. You touched on that there a second ago. Now, other issues, Sean, I'm going to throw this one. This is like testing the goalkeeper, but I'm hitting a hard shot into you straight away. Is Tony Ralston worth his new contract? Sean Martin, take the floor.
Well, I mean, what else can you say that we haven't already about? I mean, he's seen both sides of it in the 3 months that he's been back at the club, hasn't he? I mean, he was roundly dismissed, and partly correctly, earlier in the season, but his turnaround, to be fair to him, the turnaround that he's had, the way he's embraced what Ange Postecoglou has been asking for, the fact that he scored a few goals, he's had some important moments defensively too. It's all led to this kind of moment where he's no longer just here until the end of the season. He's now here until 2025. Whether you think that is slightly too long or not, regardless of that, you'd have to say that so far the form that he's shown has to say it's thoroughly deserved that he got an extension. He's still enjoying a run in the first 11 at the moment rather than just the first team squad, and although I don't necessarily expect that to be the case longer term, I would say overall he is deserving of the new deal and a role in the squad that frankly seemed beyond him at the start of the season just a couple of months ago. So absolutely well done to him from me.
Tommy Welsh knows how to split the panel asunder, Alison, with that question. What's your thoughts on Tony Ralston?
I think I'd probably echo what Sean's just said, to be honest. I also would add that I think it speaks volumes about the boy's character. I think it would have been very easy for him to go into his shell. I think it would have been easy just to say, it's not worked, it's been disappointing, I go elsewhere. I think it must be very, very difficult to play at a club like Celtic when you know that the bulk of 60,000 people don't think you're good enough. I think the pressure of that must be tough. And I think you need a particular kind of mindset to focus on what's in front of you and go out and think, I'm going to play to my strengths, I'm going to listen to my manager, I'm going to work hard and see if I can turn this around. It's not an easy thing to do at all. I think you would have to applaud the manner in which he got his head down and got on with it. And I do think he's deserving of the contract. I think, like Sean, I think he might not be an automatic first pick for that right back berth when everyone's fit and available and Juranovic can swap back over. But he's certainly an option, and he would certainly be viewed as a decent option and a decent alternative, and I'm not sure that confidence was there just at the start of the season.
I echo both of those sentiments, and I've, on the other pod I appear on, I have had moments where I've got tore into Anthony Ralston and I've held my hand up and said, there you go, got it wrong, because he has put his heart and soul into working on his game, and he's clearly learned from the likes of Joe Hart talking to him and also listened to his manager, and the faith that his manager has put in him, he's restored that and repaid that, I would like to think. And I think he is worth his new contract. But I tell you what I'm not having, guys. I'm not having the meltdown that has happened that Tony Ralston's not been called up for the Scotland squad. I just can't have that at the minute. I'm willing to accept that he's turning and shaping people's minds and getting them on side by his performances for Celtic this season, but I can't have him for Scotland, not at this juncture in his career. Tell me I'm wrong.
You're wrong. No. Well, what I would say is, from a Celtic point of view, you could argue that the fewer players away on international duty, the better. Especially given not the last break, because that was fairly all right, but the one before that wreaked absolute havoc with the squad. I think yesterday, as much as obviously Ralston's omission, if you want to call it an omission, James Forrest not being included is a benefit for me. He's just returning from injury. He could still have been chosen. Like, his experience, you know what you're getting, and Steve Clarke, I'm sure, would love to have had him, but I think you'd imagine it's an agreement between Steve Clarke and the club that it's too soon, and rightly so for me. So I think that was a benefit. But coming back to Ralston, I mean, all right, we posed the question about him and Stephen Welsh earlier in the year, albeit, and I think we all said it was too soon and they'd need to continue putting in big displays before that kind of thing would come, play well for Celtic, and that kind of thing naturally follows. Welsh has obviously dropped out the team since Carter Vickers arrived, so you can't really make that argument for him. But Ralston has still been doing well. He's still been playing most of the games. I think there's certainly an argument to say he could have been given a chance. I mean, Calvin Ramsey at Aberdeen is injured. He would have been up there chatting at the door. Stephen O'Donnell was always going to be in the squad. I think we can agree, no matter what our opinions are on how good or how poor he is in general compared to other people. And the other right back in the squad, I think you'd be as well still calling him a youth player with the almost total lack of football he actually plays at senior level. So, of course, when you're prefixed to your name is generational talent, you get in regardless, obviously. So, but I digress. Back to my original point is that while he arguably, Ralston, disagree with you, Tony, while he arguably deserves it for his form the past few months, I think in Celtic's mind, it's probably just one fewer player away in international duty to worry about at the end of the day.
Now, David Bradley comes in again. Yes, all day, pure heart by the boys, Sean. Simon Thomas comes in. If you said that the right fullback would score 4 goals in the first 19 competitive games, you take that every day of the week. Frank Brennan comes in, Alison, and says, absolutely, Tony Ralston would rather have a new contract. Absy fiercely critic back in the day. Always delighted to be proved completely wrong. Only hope that Mikey Johnson does the same. Les comes in, not a Ralston fan, but credit where it's due. The boys worked so hard, been impressive, and deserves his new contract. Your thoughts, Alison? Is he worthy of a Scotland call-up?
I think when you assess what he's offered and the magnitude of the games that he's played in, I think he definitely had to be in consideration for it. I would say that I think Steve Clarke is pretty loyal to people that he's brought in before. I think you know that. I think you know what he's going to be like. But what I do think is that if he sustains the form he's shown just now and he keeps his place in the Celtic team, I think he becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. I think it becomes an inevitability that he gets himself in there. Yeah,
and I think that's what some of the comments here are saying as well. Simon Thomas, way too early for a national team, but a consistent year in the league will improve his stocks. And Kookaburra comes back in. It's absolutely brilliant, so thoroughly deserved. He's a shining example of what can be achieved through perseverance and hard work, tough mindset, and totally committed to the cause. And Frank comes back in, going to disagree with me, completely disagree with Tony. We're talking here, I've been called up for Clark, not to include him, is for me nearly completely beyond belief, and Clark should be made to explain why. Well, Frank, it is. That's another take on it. That's fair enough. If you're talking about current form, then I guess Ralston should be, as Alison said, considered. But as we know, Clark is quite loyal, as you said as well, Alison, to people that have gone before. But I think that Ralston has to have, another consistent spell for him to be considered for international duty. Just my thoughts, but a lot of Celtic supporters see it differently. But it's a good debater, is it not, Alison? It's a good talking point.
I think even if you look, when you watch Saturday's game back again and you look, I think I was surprised I wasn't at the game at the weekend, but when I watched the highlights, I thought there were at least 4 balls put in the box by Anthony Ralston on Saturday that I think a big commanding striker should have been fighting to get on the end of. I think umpteen times I thought he got pretty good deliveries in, and they should have done more with him. I think he has been impressive. I think he's definitely got something to offer. Time will tell. I think you can't be judged on 3 months of a contribution. I think it's got to be sustained. It's got to be consistent, and he's got to keep working. I think you can't afford now to relax in the fact that he's got the assurance of a longer term contract. I think he's got to keep the hunger that you've seen over the last 3 months, and I think he's got to keep wanting to drive and improve and fit into this Celtic team.
Your thoughts, Sean? Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. I think that's exactly the next step for him. And again, we've kind of mentioned that I don't know if any of the three of us expect him to be the first choice right back for the next longer term, if you know what I mean. But while he's got the chances and while he's in the team, that is the key. That just because he's got the contract now that goes beyond this season, that none of the hard work, none of the application that he's shown so far starts to go away because he's got that security. And to be honest, nothing that he's shown so far this season suggests it will go away. So.
And Frank comes in again. Who would we rather have in the Celtic team now, Anthony Ralston or Stephen O'Donnell? Frank, you know how to flick buttons and push buttons. Yes, indeed. Well, I guess that's another question, isn't it? We know who Steve Clarke wants in his team. It's clearly Stephen O'Donnell just now, but that's not to say in the future that Anthony Ralston can surpass Stephen O'Donnell in that pecking order, guys. That's basically what we're saying. And watch this space, isn't it? And if he continues to perform, then international honours will follow.
Yep.
And on that cheery and high note, we shall end another Celtic Way daily briefing. And remember, if you're watching on YouTube, just hit the subscribe button and pay £1 a month, covering top quality journalism for the club that you love. You'll get notifications of the bulletins. You'll see stuff from Alison and Sean. You might even see stuff from this idiot here. All right. So, all the best. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for your contribution. Appreciate it as always. Cheers, Alison. Cheers, Sean.
Take care.
Yes, Tony.